All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Understanding CBD. I am your host, Stephen Wallman from Wallman's Apothecary. We're known for the purest and best hemp extracts, and you can find our lab reports because they speak for themselves on our website at wallmansapothecary.com. Today, we have another fantastic guest for you, and I'll introduce him in just a moment. The topic here is marketing cannabis, challenges and considerations for medical use, with Steve Goldner, who is our guest today. Now, Steve is a founder and chief brand officer at his company named Brand Building Cannabis. He also holds an advisory role at Council for Federal Cannabis Regulations, or CFCR, as many of you know it, and currently consulting with brands and medicinal and adult use cannabis. Got to know this guy quite a bit over the past couple months. He's become a good friend, and I look forward to hearing his advice. And I know everyone's going to really benefit from his words of wisdom. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hi, Steve. Great to be there. Too many Steves, but I'm sure it's going to be a great show anyway.
Great name. I got to tell you, I know we didn't choose it for ourselves, but you know, sometimes there's like a 3 Steve rule. When there's more than 2, I think like things explode or something like that. But we should be good here. And I'm excited to talk to you about this topic because, as you know, I do own a cannabis brand. I've been marketing cannabis since 2019, early 2019. And the reason I created Understanding CBD was because I had challenges communicating and talking about cannabis on my other website at Wallman's Apothecary, because you can't make health claims and all this other stuff. So I wanted to interview people. And when I'm interviewing a doctor and the doctor's saying, well, I helped my patient with this, I couldn't do it on that website. So I created Understanding CBD platform, did a radio show, all of this to work around some of these marketing restrictions. And I've done sales and marketing my life, but I wouldn't consider myself an expert. And just like anything, you know, if you can be a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, you know, I consider you to be a master in marketing. And I'm really excited to ask some questions, not just for me, but for also people that are listening. Now, normally our listeners we target consumers that aren't familiar with cannabis as medicine, and also healthcare providers and clinicians that think cannabis is really medicinal cannabis is like a wink, wink. So for that audience, I also want you to realize that anytime you're purchasing a product, you're still a consumer. And there's that caveat emptor, buyer beware. So through the beginning of a lot of these conversations, it's, you know, make sure that you don't take anything that we say here is medical or legal advice. Consult with your physician and all those types of things as a primer to most of the conversations we have, which could also be some of the challenges that we talk about today. But I wanted to get us started. And of course, Steve, I got a lot of questions here. I'm not sure if we'll even get to them, but I'm really interested in hearing your comments. But to get started with the highly regulated nature in the cannabis industry, what are some of the most significant challenges that businesses face when it comes to marketing cannabis products? And based on your experience, what are the fundamentals? What other fundamentals of marketing are important?
So let's nip this right in the butt right in the beginning. You cannot make claims that cannabis does X, Y, and Z. It heals this. It gives relief for that. And yes, you can fly under the radar for a long period of time and not be noticed. But at some point, if you become big enough, you might get letters from lawyers, cease and desist letters of that nature. So it really is complicated. But I want to emphasize that is the wrong place to start. Everyone starts with that. Where should I advertise? How can I go about it? I'll get shadow banned on Facebook and Instagram, and they start there. And there's a reason why I have this background. I like the colors, by the way, but it really is my.
You got a target on your head?
And I'm going to slide to the side.
Okay.
So others can see it for a second, and you see brand, product, content, and communication.
I can actually make that a little bit larger too, Steve, if you want to.
Okay, I mean, I'm going to talk to these points. So let me, I remember not so long ago, a CEO said to me, If I gave you X amount of dollars, he said, I forget if it was $5,000 or $10,000 of advertising budget, where would you place it and what will we get for it? We hadn't even defined what the brand was, what the product is. So I want to really emphasize this is one of the key things that everyone should bring from other industries of marketing to the cannabis industry. Cannabis is unlike any other industry, I know that, but there's ways to run business that other industries have done successful. And I want to tell you about that in relationship to marketing. So the first thing that you must start with to be successful is a brand definition. What's the brand objectives? Most importantly, who are your customers? Who is the target audience? You cannot be everything to everyone. How does your brand define long-term success? What does your brand stand for? So a great example on what does your brand stand for. All the brands out there that are championing LGBTQ Pride Month and do nothing about it except in June, that's BS, okay? What does your brand stand for? Continue to make sure that you emphasize that. Important, what are the promises your brand makes to its customers? What's the personality of your brand? So notice in all of this that I've described about brand definition, I didn't use what does your logo look like? What is the font you're using? What are the colors? All of those things are defined by the definition of the brand and your personality. So once you have that in place, then you need to define a product, your product. And I use a product positioning template that has 6 attributes that I think everyone needs to define. Number 1, for, who's your target audience? Number 2, who, what is the key qualifier about that audience? 3, our product is, name the product category, medicinal marijuana, adult use cannabis. 4, that provides, what is the key benefit that your product provides? Number 5, unlike, name your main competitor. Last one, our product, name the key point of differentiation. So those things, for who, our product is, that provides, unlike, and our product, this is for internal use only. You do not communicate this externally, but all your content should reinforce that product positioning. And by the way, you might have to do a couple of product positioning statements because you might be a B2B company that also does DTC or direct to consumer. So it's okay to have a couple or even more than one product positioning statement if you're playing to different target audiences. But they cannot compete against each other or eliminate one another. So there's that brand umbrella on the top, and you have product positionings that need to fit under that brand. Once you have that in place, then you have to have a content strategy. And I have a very detailed content strategy. You can, as a follow-up, if anyone wants it, reach out to me. It's on I have a couple of blogging sites. One's called socialsteve.wordpress.com. And if you search there, there's an extensive detail of how you build a content plan. But generally speaking here, the key point that I want people to know is your content is a Venn diagram. One circle is what do you want to say and what do you want to communicate to your target audience? That's one circle. The other circle is what does your target audience want or need to hear? And the intersection of those two things is what you should have is the content strategy you should have. Then, and now, only now, am I addressing the initial question of advertisement and communication. Your communication should be a synergy, and I'm going to throw 3 marketing terms out here: owned, earned, and paid media. Owned media is what you write about yourself, your blogs, your posts, whatnot. Earned media is when people pick you up in journals or media sites. And then paid media, obviously, is advertisement. And also, and this is very, very important for cannabis, think about UGC, user-generated content. Now, a brand or a company cannot say, cannabis gave me relief of my back pain. But you can put up a testimonial where someone has said that. That's not off bounds. And all you're doing is basically attributing it, not saying it in your voice, but attributing it to that. So the use of UGC becomes really, really important. And what you should think about is creating a groundswell where word of mouth gets out about your products. So we can go in more detail, but I could take the whole 45 minutes and address this one question, but I'll let you throw others at me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And, it was my experience with, especially with user generated content that we had, now the medical cannabis versus the CBD businesses are different as far as how you can sell, because CBD cannabis or hemp cannabis is federally legal. So we can sell on the web. We can use credit card processors, certain ones that are underwritten for it. But what they do is they audit your website, and we had to remove the consumer reviews that would say, yes, this really helped me with my back pain, if it's on a website that is actually doing a transaction. So I can put it on a social media profile, but if it's directly related to a financial transaction, the credit card company would be there. And that kind of takes me to this initial concern, which is, people are saying we're limited where we can advertise. Do you know what parties are the ones that are restricting advertising? Like,
Oh,
when we say it's
the platforms themselves, because they're afraid to play in the cannabis. So even when by the way, Twitter said you could advertise on Twitter about cannabis. If you read the fine print, it said, but you can't sell any products or promote any products. So, yes, you got to understand the nuances and the detail of every plan. By the way, and I'm not going to name names, but I know they're on here. I work with a cannabis company that had over 100,000 followers on Instagram. Did I say Instagram? I might have said Facebook. Over 100,000 followers on Instagram. They got squashed, deleted away everything they had. These folks rebuilt it from scratch again. But that is, those are the things that you face potentially.
Yeah, and it's a lot of money down the drain if you lose your audience there.
And it's a lot. Look, I've been in social media for a long time, and I will tell you, it's not about buying likes. Everyone learned that. It's about engagement. It's about putting good content. It's about being there for your audience. And oh, by the way, that takes a lot of time, a long time. But everyone should pace themselves and continually say, how do I motivate my audience? How do I get them excited about what I'm saying? How do I get them to share what I have to say? And if you engage with people like we're engaging now, let's just talk to one another. Yeah. By the way, don't just post on social media. Go out, find something that someone's talking about, and then you can talk about your brand.
Yeah, you're talking about authentically engaging and not just passing it over to the AI bot to automate everything and get it running quicker and more efficient and so forth. Now, the summarize, really what you said in the beginning, and I see there's some comments of people that didn't write it all down. If you want to post a comment or send an email, we'll give you some contact information to Steve to follow up and help everyone. But I had one question.
Steve, I was trying to write in a comment. I did see that, and okay. I have it because I'm streaming it on LinkedIn. It says can't post comments to LinkedIn. And I have it in my copy buffer. So if you want to tell me really quick how I can drop that in there, I can paste.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll get people. We'll get them the information. Okay. We do this live event, and it goes maybe for another 20 minutes or so, and then afterwards, if you post a comment in it, I'll monitor it and I'll make sure that you'll get all the information that you need to have it. But I wanted to ask you this, and I don't want it to slip my mind. I know you've consulted with a lot of clients in the cannabis space. And I don't want you to call anyone out here, but a general feel, like when you go into a cannabis company, I know you don't get every deal you talk to. How many people actually consider this branding and this process and making sure that they identify their target market, and they're doing a SWOT analysis, and they're really making sure that they have a really good value proposition for their marketplace, versus the ones that are just like, well, it's just cannabis, just get us some people in the door. Do you have any sort of feel for where people are on that?
Less than 10%. And this
Less than 10% have actually gone through the basic
yeah,
fundamentals.
because here's the problem. Because all the exercise that I just talked about takes time. And that when you do an advertisement, what are you going to advertise? That you can look at ROI, what's my return on investment, or ROAS, what's my return on advertising spend. But if you're not figuring out what it is you need to say such that it's compelling to a specific target audience and doing that, it's crap. And I will tell you that it infuriates me. Yes, I'm using that word, that the cannabis industry, as I see it, because we are so challenged, let's talk about reality. No one has discretionary funds that they can say, oh, let's just figure this out. This gets pushed aside because everyone wants an immediate ROI. But for everyone out there, you don't necessarily need to hire me to do this. And I'll give you where these questions are that you can answer, but you better do it, or else you're going to continue to flounder. So it is challenging for me, who knows that this is so important, to go into a brand and say, okay, I'm going to do 3 months of work for you. There'll be no immediate ROI. So I think that it becomes a very delicate balance of saying, okay, we're going to work to get your name, your product, your testimonials, get people talking about you, get engagement, get a following, people to love your product, and at the same time, work this a bit. So I want to be realistic about this.
Yeah.
I'm not telling anyone to say, stop, don't do anything else. But if you never address this and you continue to work on your immediate needs, you will never get to building a strong, powerful brand. And thus, you will not survive. And thus, you will not have long-term success. Look, the reality in cannabis is today, everyone's fighting for survival. It's challenging for everyone. But allocate 5, 10% of your time to doing this. It will be beneficial to you. Take time to figure out exactly who your target audience is. I always say this, and I'm going to be a bit provocative here on purpose. Is an urban-minded 25-year-old male using cannabis for the same reasons as a 60-plus menopausal woman? And should the messages be the same? And are you going to be able to attract both of those audiences? Who is your cannabis for? Why are they using it? And cannabis is not one thing. How many ingredients are in cannabis? Oh, by the way, CBN is good for sleep. CBD is good for pain and inflammation. THC is psychoactive. Terpenes, they all have various effects on the body in the endocannabinoid system. How are you attracting something? And one thing I know it's on our list of questions, and I want to address it right here. There's a difference between marketing adult use and medical marijuana. The key differentiation when you think about how your audience reacts as behavior is their degree of wanting to be educated. Okay? Think about this a second. As someone who's looking to use cannabis to relieve medical conditions, they want to know. They are pissed off. They've been trying synthetic drugs from their doctor for how long? Now they have a plant-based drug that can actually help them, or maybe. They want to know, what are the terpenes that affect X, Y, and Z? What are the cannabinoids that help these various conditions? They are more apt to be open to education. Now, in the adult use market, everyone is marketing based upon THC levels alone. I want the highest THC. That's what I go to my dispensary for. I want to get pretty baked.
Yeah.
No one's asked, but I will tell you that the future of the recreational cannabis industry is incumbent upon all of our degree to educate consumers. So for instance, I now know that when I use cannabis, I do not want myrcene in my cannabis. It took me a long time. I've been using cannabis for decades. I didn't learn this till the past couple of years. And now my experiences using cannabis have been optimized, and I'm getting a much better experience. So the good news, because this is about a medical marketing cannabis, is there are people, if you have a medical marijuana brand, you should find partners to work with to educate. And I give you this one example. I've used the word a bit, groundswell, and I use it on purpose. In about 2008, I got active into social media because I knew it was going to dramatically change marketing. Brands couldn't just say X, Y, and Z. Now that people in a democracy could yell bullshit and foul and say, no, you're not the best. No, it doesn't do this.
Instead of yelling at your TV, they can actually type it in.
They can type it in, and they have an audience, by the way, and they can diminish your brand reputation. There was a book written called Groundswell by two much more brilliant than me, Forrester marketing analysts, Josh Bernoff and Charlene Lee. The book was called Groundswell. And to this day, it has been the best marketing book and really taught me how to use social media to crowdsource and to get people excited. And in the book, they have an example of Sloan Kettering that did a complete remarketing vamp of their cancer treatment. They constantly were marketing to people who were going through cancer and addressing them. And you know what they figured out? Everyone knows someone who's had cancer. It's hit my family. I lost a sister, so everyone knows the story. The first thing that happens, God forbid, if you find out you have cancer, you go to a doctor and say, what do I do? Who do I turn to? So Sloan Kettering, instead of marketing to patients that they were the best hospital for cancer treatments, they paired with doctors. And the doctors were their influence marketers. Think about how influence works, because that's where the message is delivered. So in medical marijuana, we need to find the doctors, the pharmacists, the researchers who are more apt to doing, quote, alternative medicine. It's called alternative because all we've been doing is pushing people with synthetic drugs as opposed to plant-based drugs and looking at solutions for that. And that is a strong vehicle. So
yeah, they prefer integrative medicine. Like those are the buzzwords: holistic, healers, integrative medicine, alternative. Those are typically the ones that we at least target to have conversations with because they have the time and they're more open-minded. There's another challenge with marketing cannabis, and we haven't talked about this, but if someone is going to purchase a drug that's been prescribed or recommended by their doctor, they can claim that on their insurance and get insurance. Cannabis is out of the pocket. You got to pay out of pocket. So, that's a huge barrier to selling that. Do you have any ideas on how to, at least approach that with a patient, or what sort of conversation should be around at least the mindset of, of the value of, cannabis? I mean, the standard thing we always say, you pay $1 for wellness is like 10,000 for your sickness or something like that. But
so I don't have a good answer. And I think that is extremely problematic. And what I do about this, and I'm not putting this on anyone else's shoulders, I feel that I am A, passionate about cannabis, B, I work in the industry. So as a result of that, I need to do some work to change the irrational things that are in place. And that is specifically why I work with the CFCR, the Council for Federal Cannabis Regulations, an organization that works with government regulators, that works within the industry, that's looking out for the best of consumers. And it's not easy to put all these things together. What I will tell you is the most important thing that we can, as a groundswell, rally to do is to first get cannabis rescheduled from the Schedule 1 drug list. And I want to read something directly from the DEA website of what a Schedule 1 drug is. A Schedule 1 drugs, and quote, Schedule 1 drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. And it goes on to list drugs such as heroin, LSD, marijuana, ecstasy, peyote. Now, the key word there was accepted medical use. That is within the definition of the United States government at this point. There was a study that was just done in Australia where they had 3,100 patients who had problems and their prescriptive drugs had failed them. And the study showed that they had a better quality of life. There is more research being done outside of the United States than within the United States. And I am troubled to consider ourselves a leading country when we have, pardon my French, shit like that in place. So, number one, everyone blames things on the FDA. The FDA is at the hands of the DEA, if you will.
Yeah, and Congress.
Right, and Congress. And by the way, there was something I posted on LinkedIn. There was a bill that hit the floor. It was very political to increase research for cannabis. And it got into I'm not going to play politics here. It got into a political party fight where one party could not favor it because it would diminish their power within Congress. Complete stuff. So my point here is back to marketing. There's rules in place. We should follow them. I'm not telling anyone to say, go out there and say, cannabis relieves X, Y, and Z. If you're found, you will be held accountable. There are ways to work it around that. And that is by working with your audience that appreciates what you have. And by the way, there's no shortage of like CBD bullshit remedies out there. Personally, I've used Wallman's products. I know they're of the highest quality. For those that are just putting supplements out there into a bullshit market, go away. To those that are fighting the fight and working with well-cultivated products of CBD or cannabis, continue to push what your value is. Go back to that product positioning statement. Make sure you put in there why you're different than that CBD product I can buy in a head shop that isn't even a legal dispensary.
So you bring up a lot of good points, and I have like a million questions as we go through this. But you mentioned 10% of the companies that you have consulted with are actually concerned about or interested in or prepared to do
put money up to do. So I think they all want to, but pay to do this.
Right. Well, so that's all that matters. If you're not going to, people give lip service to all kinds of great ideas. Steve, that's a great idea. I don't know how many times I've heard about, I've been an advocate for hemp products too, and helping the industry get more buyers and people to buy industrial hemp for clothing and food and fuel and all these things that we know it can benefit the planet. But when you talk to a buyer, it sounds great, but when it comes down to price, they just, it's just a dollars and cents thing. Is it cheaper? It's got to be cheaper or less, the dollars and cents. I'm not willing to pay more for the environment. So what that tells me is the mindset of these businesses is short term. If you're not willing to make an investment in building your brand, it's a short term business. You know what I mean? I own a company. I'm not a short term business. I'm not worried about, short term money. This is a new industry. Consumers don't know about it. I didn't get into this to get out. I make the medicine. I make cannabis for myself, my family, my loved ones, and it's here for the long term. If I don't make it anymore, I'm not sure what I would get it from because no one really does what we do. So I know it's a short-term mindset as a consumer. And you walk into a store and you see a company that's, as the things that we've talked about now, you can't make health claims, you can't make guarantees, you can't say claims. when you see a product on the shelf that says this will help you sleep, this is going to take away your pain, how should consumers react? Because you know what? I get the call all day long. Steve, which one's for sleep? Which one's for pain? You
So,
know,
so
like,
to me, this is where the medical professionals become very important. So I think that people who are in medical marijuana need to partner with, let me put a big umbrella and call them clinicians, whether they're doctors, nurses, pharmacists, researchers, people that have studied this, and they need to partner with it. By the way, you're absolutely right. I mean, I saw a CNN report a couple of Saturdays ago about the and by the way, CBD is under the supplement umbrella of products. The number of claims, and it was mainly against melatonin, not CBD type products, like what they say is in there is not in there. The supplements aren't mandatory to be tested to verify that what they're putting on the label is actually in there. So to me, I think it would be best if we'd all be just honest. If you want to build a reputable product and you want people to say, wow, this is great, it helped me, be honest about what's in there and what you're aiming to solve for people, although you can't say that, and find people who will cover you and give you testimonials. And by the way, I think there's a whole marketing program to be developed for everyone based upon UGC, because you can't say it, but they can. And by
and
the
it means
way,
more when they say it too, because I can say everything, but obviously I'm financially benefiting from someone purchasing the benefit of the company. So most people just discount when I could say the same thing. It
you can't
reminds
say
me of like
your product's great. I can. Right? I mean, as far
right,
as marketing. And by the
right.
way, Wallman's Apothecarium products are great. I have tried them and used them, but I could say that. And by the way, I have no financial ramifications of saying that on here. So yeah, and there's two lines that I love using. Number one, great marketing guy. His name's Jeff Hazlitt. He's not in cannabis. He once said, "I love it when other people market my products." There's magic there. Figure out how to get that done. Okay. We can talk about details of how to get that done. And the other thing, and I know that I gave this example to you on one of our talks, the movie Elf. He goes in, he's in New York City. He sees a neon sign on the diner, world's best coffee, and he goes in there and says, "Congratulations, you have the world's best coffee." We all know that's bullshit. Come on, figure out a way to build great products, build great solutions for people, and figure out how to get that word out there. And that follows all of those circles that I have in there. And the last circle was the communication. And the communication is the hardest part because we are very much handcuffed, but it's not impossible. And I know companies, a few in the cannabis industry, that continue to put out great content, attract people, have built a reputation for having great products, but they've never said, my product's great, my product's the best of this. They've engaged with their audience, they've relied on others to do that for them, and they're there for their target audience. And if you think in that mindset about marketing and selling your product that has unique value to an audience, because of the concoction, because of the strand, because you've done ESG type cultivation, or that's part of your organization, you will win over an audience. But it's not just like putting up an ad and saying 50% off and getting people
Well,
to
and there's proof
react
of
to
this.
the call to action. Sorry,
Yeah,
go
and
ahead.
there's proof of this too. Charlotte's Web, which is the leader in the hemp CBD space, the hemp cannabis, they have, from the outside, they got to deal with Major League Baseball. They're still losing millions of dollars. They also, have the brand recognition and put it out there. So you can get relationships, you can get the message out there, but unless you're really engaging with the audience, it's just, you got to really drive it through.
Yes. Simple, simple answer to that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so even the big brands that are in it for the long term struggle with the same concept. It's not just small ones. So I think we've really hit on a lot of these challenges. And the main thing, at least I like consumers to take a look at, is if you're waiting for, and other brands too, if you're waiting for your brand to take off, if you need FDA approval or you need more studies to come out, you're waiting for nothing. That's just putting the
No, you
finger
got to
somewhere
play within
else.
the rules. So taxation's too high. Regulations are crazy. It needs to drop down from a Schedule 1. If you're waiting for those things and not doing actionable things, your your business is floating away. So what I really think is important is, and I've used this word before, you got to figure out how to arbitrage the system. Okay, arbitrage is illegal. Let's be clear about it. It's about buying and selling at the same time and playing a game of that. But there have been what I would call arbitrage systems. So, for instance, I was in the telephony industry. There was a period when AT&T broke up, and you found new routes into countries to get around the tariffs. And that was what was called VoIP, voice over IP. Okay, so you could sneak it in as a non-telephony thing and then branch it out. But as soon as you got caught, you were handcuffed. What's happened in cannabis? Cannabis, there's something the financial constraints. You're not allowed to pay with a credit card to buy your cannabis. So people built systems where you could pay with a credit card, and they faked it out to make it look like you were deducting money from an ATM that was in the environment and just paying, and the transaction went through. They clamped that down. Play within the system that is legal today. And as these things open up, be ready to take advantage of it. Our job in cannabis today will continually change for the next 10 years. Because if anyone thinks the industry as defined today is the way it will be in 10 years, pun intended, you're smoking dope.
Yeah.
Play within the rules today, but the main thing is that consumer and how to reach them and how to influence them and how them to zero in on your product. And following these circles is the best start. And that last ring, we can work tactically to figure out, if you've done all your homework, how to engage with them and get your message across.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to get to some of these comments in a minute before we get off. But one of the last questions I had for you, Steve, is people. The truth is, we meaning the cannabis industry, is making inroads into consumers. There's more states opening up. People are talking to their congressmen, their senators. They're getting changes to the cannabis laws. So things are opening up. And as more and more people explore the potential of cannabis as medicine, not just to get high, how can cannabis companies embrace or get part of this broader health or wellness community where you get supplements or people taking herbs and so forth, and really touch this wellness community and the health conscious consumers?
So I personally follow a number of people that I think are like the best geeks of the world, and I mean that in the most positive sense. I follow someone who does a lot of research on what the terpenes do. I follow pharmacists who have engaged alternative practices. I'm glad to see universities like the University of Maryland having a program for cannabis and cannabis research, as does Stockton University, which is in Pennsylvania, and there's a handful other. If we are really passionate about this, and quite frankly, I hope those are the only people that are in the cannabis industry, not people looking to get rich right away, because that isn't happening. We need to band together and get that information out there. We need to push our legislators to change the crazy laws. I think before this, I looked, 23 states for adult use, if I've got the number right, 37 states for medicinal. I looked that up before this live stream. That's great.
Yeah, there's like 75%, at least, it may be a little bit higher than 75% of states have a pathway for their citizens to purchase cannabis legally.
That is great, but we still got that overhanging federal thing. So, for instance, quite frankly, like someone posted up on LinkedIn, will you only vacation in a place that's in a state that has a legalized cannabis?
Right.
I kind of feel yes. I mean, I wouldn't be so myopic to say, but that would be a factor. We need to change federally what's in place. And that
Well,
is
yeah,
super
if you can't like TSA, I still don't think you can fly with medical cannabis. You can fly with
You
CBD
can.
with no T. Right.
You
So if
can.
I'm going on vacation to a state that doesn't have my medicine available, I can't fly with it. I can't ship it there. I'd have to be a factor.
It is. And so, and I've thought about this. So I've flown with cannabis, which was CBD, less than 0.3% of THC. And I carried the COA with me just in case I ever got stopped. But I also knew where I could get cannabis at that state that I was visiting. And I'm not suggesting anyone break any laws here now, but I will say the TSA care more about guns and ammunition than cannabis.
Maybe we can do this as an after hours on how to prepare your cannabis for flight so it won't be detected. I have a lot of tricks that I used to use back in the day. It probably wouldn't be something that I would put up on here, but that was
put it in your luggage. Goes right through. I mean, I think we all have tricks, and yeah.
I would do this. So let's go to some of these questions, and we have here Elena, and her comment is, when people trust one and a person does have stats to prove from testing, families will purchase. And what do you think about that comment, Steve?
I wholeheartedly agree. So one of the first cannabis advocates that I came in contact with probably 2 years ago. Her name's Nikki Lawley. She's well known. Many people will know her. She had a traumatic brain injury. She was close to suicide. I personally, with no agenda, promote her when she puts stuff out there because she is saying cannabis saved my life. I had suicidal thoughts. I could not function. And so, like, when you hear things like that, please, everyone, spread the word of someone who just has something to say about how it pulled them back to life. How many people have been rescued from anxiety and depression because of cannabis? How many people with PTSDs have found some degree of relief from that? We haven't even talked about psilocybin, which probably has more medical benefits for PTSD than cannabis. But, personally, hey, I'll tell you, I have anxiety and depression. I'm not ashamed to admit it. And I will tell you that cannabis has been a great remedy with other things. We haven't talked about that, with other things. So, like, for instance, when I used that Wallman's balm on my back for my back pain, it gave me a certain degree of relief, but there are other things that I need to do to help also. So it is pulling together many solutions, of which cannabis is one in the big pie picture, if you will.
Yeah, that's great. And the other thing with when it comes to testing goes, the clinical trials. The challenge I see in using that as a basis for a personal decision to use cannabis or not is a lot of those times, the FDA, if they're doing a clinical trial, it's for a specific molecule to perform a specific result. Like CBD is federally legal in Epidiolex to treat a certain type of seizures. And it was a clinical trial. They proved it. And the reason they chose seizures wasn't because CBD is only good for seizures. It's easily quantifiable. You can measure, right? You can say, I had 100 seizures and it went down to 5. That's the kind of data that they need in order to approve one of these things. So
let me just say this, and this could be a whole nother more than 45 minutes.
All right, good, Steve. So we're going to book you again. Is that what you're saying? You'll come back and talk more?
To do it. I love this conversation. I just want to say this. The FDA is not the enemy. Okay, everyone thinks it is, And it's very popular to be able to say, oh, they're keeping from X, Y, and Z. I'm working on with another group the presentation of what the FDA looks at on everything. If it's in your CBD, if it's in your food, if it's in dog food, if it's all these things. And people should really understand what they're trying to do. And I know someone's going to comment and say, oh, they're corrupt or whatever. But my working with them is no, they want to provide a safe and sensible solution for people. And that means that there needs to be evidence. By the way, there isn't enough research to go on for that evidence. You know, whose fault is that? But please get information. Don't just sit on your armchair. And I don't mean this to you, Steve, and be a critic. Understand where the cracks are in the system and put a little bit into that.
Yeah.
You know,
advocate for yourself. You be responsible. That's a great message. We have Elena Nawi, if I'm pronouncing that right. She's got a lot of comments here, and we do see them. Elena, we do appreciate you making comments, and you have a lot of passion for marketing and helping this message. So we do notice it, and we'd love to follow up after. And
I will follow up. I will.
And
so I have seen her, and it's very much in the LinkedIn stream. I will go back and look. And
yeah, so we are noticing you there. Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing that I'd like to say, Steve, as we're running, I want to be mindful. I could go on further, but I want to be mindful to everyone else's time. If people have comments or questions, or they just want to talk, and I'm not looking for a consulting engagement, you just want to talk things through, the Wallmans know that I do that. You know, there's other people on here that know that I'm always happy to do that. Just reach out to me. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there a lot. In my contact area, it's public how you can email me. Let's talk. Let's, no hidden agenda.
True. Yeah, we have Dr. Felicia Stoller, great session. So
who I've engaged with before on LinkedIn. Nice to have you here. Yep.
That's great. Ryan Bowman has made a bunch of comments on here. He's been following us along. Thank you, Ryan, for listening. Linda Rabinovich is also here. What does she say?
Let me hit this question that just came in from Andrea real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. Why
is there a big push for Delta 8 and Delta?
No, let me see this. I can put it on the screen here. There you go. Yeah.
So when I was talking about arbitrage, Delta 8 is arbitrage. Okay, so they take it. So people can put a lot of THC of Delta 8, and I don't know chemically there's like one molecule different between Delta 8 THC and Delta 9 THC, and don't ask me the details on that, but that allows people to take hemp, which is less than 0.3% of THC.
Delta 9 THC.
Right, thank you, Steve. You're right. Yeah. And basically squeeze the hell out of it and produce a lot of THC that they can put in a product. And because what's the 2018 hemp bill, which allowed cultivation of hemp, people can do that and put it in products now. And I'm sure that's what's happening with Delta 10 as well.
Well, yeah. So to get a little more deep, because I'm in the hemp business, and what happened a couple of years ago when the CBD boom, and then there was a lot of extra hemp because CBD is difficult to sell because it doesn't have an instant reaction for the most part. It's not going to get you high, and it's easier to sell something that has a euphoric effect to it. So the chemists found out a way to take hemp and you process it with some chemicals, and you create an intoxicating THC molecule. Delta 8, Delta 10, there's THC 0. They're actually selling THCA, which is the raw form of THC, which all flowers grow. But there's loopholes because the FDA is on one side and then the DEA is on the other side. And depending on where you are, some will enforce certain things. The bottom line with it, to answer the question, is why is there a big push on Delta 8 and Delta 10 is because people will buy it. It's intoxicating. That's the bottom line. And it's you don't need a license.
Loopholes on legalization of selling.
And there's a loophole, right? You don't need a license to create it. And as far as the risk associated with those products is like anything, there's no real way to test the product. So you can create Delta 10 THCO, but in the process, in any chemical reaction, there's these byproducts, and you can't test for a lot of these things. So you want to make sure that when you are purchasing them, you wanted to get it from a right space. It looks like we have someone with an answer here. The difference between Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10 is simply the location of a double bond, and that's right. It's where if you look at it as a finger, and each one is a number, THC molecule kind of bounces around Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10 kind of thing. But yeah, it is a major issue. There's a new farm bill coming out that may close that loophole in some states. But I know here in Maryland, the cannabis laws that just passed in legalizing adult use cannabis also banned the sale of any hemp-derived intoxicating cannabinoid and lowering the amount of THC. So we have 0.3 is federally legal, but what companies are doing, including the large public companies like CBDMD, if it's 0.3% or less THC, then it's legal. So what they do is they just add other ingredients. So THC comes out to be 0.3, but if you buy it, you can buy a 10 milligram Delta 9 THC gummy because it's 0.3% of, they make a gummy the size of my fist as an example, and it's 0.3. So it still has that amount of THC. In Maryland, they closed that loophole. That's a short-term business model. The way to clearly sell THC in this country is to follow the regulations, buy the license. That's really the deal. So, we've definitely gone enough time, Steve, and we can continue going on. You promise to come back?
I promise to come back.
Okay.
Two Steves, two bald-headed guys. We're meant for each other.
I'll grow my. I'll leave that for you. Okay. Some way to make us different, right? But thank you, Steve, again. Goldner, you're a fantastic guest, very educated in your art of marketing, skillful and an artist. I appreciate your time and your comments. And everyone who listened, please share this far and wide if you can to help spread the good word. And we will be back with you guys shortly. So have the great afternoon, and we appreciate you